Much better job than we did Megan Nightly News, which we still have on our agenda. And so we're very, very excited about that. Today we have Reverend Don Lewis, and we also have Sir Eric Herbert. Is that how you pronounce it?
A
Uh,
bear, as in
Herbert.
a bear sleeps in the woods.
There you go. And then today we're going to talk a little bit about Chancellor's Chat and the energy around this very long term project. People always ask, what do you do over the long term? And for Reverend Don, it has been doing that. So why don't you go ahead and offer that first, Don, and take it away.
Well, Chancellor's Chat is a chat room that I've been doing since 1998. Every Monday night at 8 p.m. Central. I now live in the Eastern time zone, so it's 9 o'clock for me now. But for at least 20 years, it was 8 o'clock, and it's been an interesting journey. It started on about.com, and then we got our own chat room. And for years and years, it was a type-in chat, and now we have a video chat, and we just get together and talk. It's not scripted. It's not laid out. It's
There's
wherever
no
the
topics
conversation
ahead of
takes
time.
place. Yeah.
There's no topics ahead of time.
hmm
Like, Reverend Don doesn't publish, say, oh, this week we'll talk about such and such. What I
Yeah.
find most fascinating is people asking, mostly it's about us asking Reverend Don for questions.
hmm
And then we sit back and enjoy the answers just like everybody else that's watching it. That is logged in, because I know that if I'm asking a question, maybe other people want to know the answer too.
hmm No, it's true. And in Chancellor's Chat, we have had really serious conversations on occasion. We were talking earlier tonight, before coming on this program, about the ideas of good and evil and whether these actually exist or are merely cultural constructs. We talked for about half an hour on that subject. Other times we talk about people's new hairstyle. It depends entirely on what people want to talk about. And we want to say hello to Raven in the chat room. Hello, Raven.
Although we did
Uh,
talk about needing our beards needing some grooming.
yes,
So,
we were talking about
we
our
do need
beard.
to see our barbers in the near future. So that did come up tonight.
Yeah, and that kind of describes Chancellor's Chat. It runs from just everyday conversation to really deep philosophical contexts on occasion, and it's entirely driven by what people want to talk about. In that way, it's kind of like the vlog I used to do, um, where it was driven by people's questions. I did not usually add things in myself. I let people guide me where they wanted to go, and that's really how I feel about Chancellor's Chat. And so it depends on how people are feeling, what's going on in the world. Sometimes a lot is going on in the world. Sometimes not very much is going on in the world. Um,
But for me, Chancellor's Chat is about a personal connection with you, sir.
well, thank you.
The fact that you and I have had conversations, and that has included many people. We've had one-on-one
Mm,
conversations in that room as well as on our own. But it tells me how approachable you are as head of this tradition.
well, thank you. I
You
try to be.
know, when new people come in, people that nobody has ever heard of, you are as welcoming and charming and accommodating and open there to discuss, to talk with them. Hey, Michael. Rev Michael just chimed in.
Hello, Michael. If you would like to come on, you're welcome as well.
And yeah,
So,
he was just in our Chancellor's
Yeah.
Chat just a few minutes ago.
so there have been more than 1,200 Chancellor's Chats since it began. I started doing some of the calculations out there. And so, yeah, it's been something.
It has.
And we will bring on our gentleman Mason here. Somebody else is
Oh,
joining us. There we go.
welcome, Mason.
And so I'm gonna leave this with a question. So why do you continue with it? Why do you have you continue with that? It is, and yet it is the longest running chat room out there that we know of. That's been continuous. It's gone from about.com, where we actually got kicked off after
Yeah.
about 5 months. Let's be honest, we were on there for about 6 months, and they actually kicked us off because we were too popular.
Yeah.
We've gone through iChats, we've gone through so many convoluted chatting systems, and finally, recently, Zoom.
The
Uh,
3D avatar chat room was the worst of all.
and that didn't last either. But why do
Yeah.
you continue, even through these evolutions? Have you continued? So that's 25, almost, yeah, it's over 20. It'll be 20. It's 25 years this year.
Oh
Uh,
my, are
I
we
didn't
going to the
realize
metaverse next?
that.
we will absolutely, not even a question.
Well, continuity is important, but I mean, my real answer to that, why I have continued it, um, kind of picks up on an earlier comment. It is about being accessible and actually connecting with people. I don't. There are a lot of ways that you cannot easily contact me, but I try to make sure that there are at least some times when people can, and anyone can come to Chancellor's Chat. Um, Including the occasional troll, but we don't get too many of them. Uh,
I've
and
been,
we talk about whatever.
I mean, I've been, around the block a few times and been with a couple of pagan organizations, big ones and small
Mm,
ones, all welcoming, on the surface to new people. But the leader has been this, especially one that is well known in the community at large.
mm,
There's a sense of celebrity. There's a sense, the term we use is BNPs, big
mm,
named pagans. And it's a good acronym to really understand that there are certain celebrities, there are certain
mm,
personalities. Like, we're going to do the telethon coming up again. We had a great telethon, and we're going to do another one. Details to follow. Please, not tonight, but there's
mm,
details to follow. We're still working out some stuff. But the names that are going to put butts in seats are
mm,
important. And when you get in their presence, and I have known many BMPs personally, and I've met many of them and had moments of interaction that they probably have no idea or have no memory of anymore. Starhawk, for
mm,
one, you know, um, uh, I met her once,
mm,
and she's not going to remember it, for that. But I still met her. I mean, Starhawk,
hmm.
how awesome is that? She's just amazing. Uh, uh, um, the
It is
Spiral
hard when
Dance.
you meet so many people.
The Spiral
Um,
Dance was the first required book that I had to read as in Grove when
mhm.
I first started. Um,
Quite a remarkable
so
book, and the original cover was the best.
yes. So as a BMP, you acknowledge that. I know you do because we've had this conversation.
Mm.
But you do so with such humility and responsibility for your role.
But that's very kind of you to say, and I appreciate that. We had a saying, um, which still comes out every now and then, about what defines the high priesthood, and it's
Mhm.
the people who have to clean up the venue at the end of the evening, and that really is kind of the truth. And if you forget that, then you end up leaving your venue dirty. Um, in the end, things don't run themselves, and you have to put the work in. I do think some people are more conscious of that than others, depending on their individual circumstances. Some people never work with a venue, and the example would be irrelevant. But to me, doing the Chancellor's Chat is part of that concept that you have to do. Um, you have to do all of the things, for one of a better way to put it. Because I assure you, in 25 years, there have been times when I did not want to get on that chat room on Monday night. I wanted to have a nap or whatever. But
Mhm.
if you do that, then after too many times, you don't have a chat room anymore. You just have to keep going. Now that's not to say I have never taken a Monday night off. I think just last Monday I took one off, um, but you have to keep things moving or they're not going to move. And when it comes to interacting with people, you have to, if you want to have a good relationship with people, you do have to interact with them. And generally speaking, I find that a pleasure rather than a duty. I see Reverend Michael is asking if he can come on.
Somebody's got to get the link to him.
Well, we will.
Don't worry about it. Don't get distracted.
Yeah, we'll continue forward. Um, you know, Edward loves to ask questions on his Facebook page, and one that they've been talking about is the nature of pagan leadership. Let me see if I can find the actual question. And while I'm thinking about it, I will share this to my page where people can see it. Was that the question? Do you want to be part of the future leadership in paganism? As part of a tradition, as a thought leader, or in some unknown form? And then it was followed by a second question. Is leadership in paganism wrong, misguided, or evil? But it's interesting. Whenever you ask that question about leadership, and people have such odd ideas in this community about leadership, they don't really seem to understand what it is. They seem to confuse leadership with rulership. And these are not the same things. Leadership is inspiring other people to do things themselves. Leadership is helping to create organizations that allow other people to move forward, as well as yourself. I think some people who come to this community have been so burned by previous religions they've been involved in that they have very skewed ideas of terms like leadership. And they tend to be very frightened of them. And I think that's a huge problem because without people facilitating the things a community needs, the community really cannot move forward. It's vitally important. And you know, the term politics has a similar reputation in the pagan community. A lot of people seem to think that the term politics is purely negative, but politics is actually the art of avoiding violence, of using diplomacy and compromise to head off what would otherwise be resolved through violence. And it is not inherently a negative thing. It's actually when it breaks down that you come to negative places. And I think that our community could use a lot more expertise in politics than it has, because so many people refuse to think in terms of diplomacy or compromise. That they want to quote, love healthy debate, end quote, which usually means arguing. They want consensus decision making, which usually means the loudest bully rules the room. They don't understand why they don't get good results from these ideas. And the truth is, a little diplomacy will take you much farther than any of that. A little consideration for the other person's position will take you a lot farther. And that is often something that is not highly considered, I think, in some branches of this community. And I do think that is because of other places that many of the people have come from where they've had only negative examples, particularly of religious leadership. And heaven knows there are lots of negative examples out there. But there are positive ones too. And it's very
There's one
important,
right
I
there,
think.
everyone. Where is he? Where is he? There's one right there.
Okay.
There's a positive example.
Yeah, I think the little boxes may be in different places on different screens, but well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that brings us back to why continuing the chat room all these years. Um, it is a way to have that personal connection, a way to have that personal relationship that builds regard between people. Um,
I have seen a difference in what they see as leadership prior to
mhm,
COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. Now, I've
mhm,
asked this question over 30 years. Actually,
yeah,
29 years ago, in a few weeks, I held something called the Pagan Leadership Conferences in Chicago.
yes,
And
indeed.
their thoughts were, and we just put up the photographs and we've done that. But at the time, what they thought I was doing an exercise out of the parliament. But one of the things they
Hmm.
thought I was going to do is going to name myself president of Chicago or whatever.
Hmm.
But what I did do is an exercise in self communication, self identification in the
Hmm.
community, and it did lead for a very active 10 years. Um, but
It
the
totally
big,
revitalized the community.
yeah, and so and it really brought up this debate. So the problem with most people is they don't want to be leaders.
Hmm.
It's they don't want to be leaders. They don't want anyone else to be leaders. In a community that is now 80% solitary, at least identified, and are fed through our marketplaces, books,
Hmm.
candles, incense, that online classes now. That this has become the issue is that they want teachers and then not really leadership. And then we come into where people like Oberonzel, like see, I don't see Oberonzel as a leader. He's not a leader in our community. He's a showman. He's a
Hmm.
preacher, but
Hmm.
he doesn't do things that actually build things over the long run. Selena Fox is a leader because she builds things that work over the long run.
Hmm.
You see people like Phyllis Carrot who are activists and they call her a leader and she does lead, but who does she lead?
Hmm.
So there's always that question. And you have Patrick McCollum, who's been deeply involved with the peace movement. He's a peace activist. But who does he actually lead? Who's he creating for?
Hmm.
And that's a big issue for me. What are they creating for? So I think part of the problem we're seeing is that leadership is about creating for the community and not just doing things. And
Hmm.
we said, and we have a lot of different ways. And of course, as you said it, they've got the Christian paradigm in their heads.
Hmm.
They've got all these other paradigms. And on top of it, you have a lot of people who see themselves as rulers.
Yes,
I've seen this over and over again. The
and usually
Gardnerian
bad ones.
and Gardnerianism really presents that. BTW presents that. All of these really strict hierarchical orders also present that idea of based in messiahhood that I'm going to tell you, and that we don't become a living conversation. Paganism is a living conversation. It ends up being hierarchical, or the idea of I'm the Viking king and you should follow me down into the depths of the earth. There's a group out there right now who's following a terrible demagogue path, saying that we're all sorts of persecuted, and they're unwilling to state what they want to do for the persecution. They just want to stand up to it. So you get this sort
Hmm.
of very emotional thing. But I ask it all the time. I've actually had pagan leaders actually tell people not to listen to me, to stay off my page, because they didn't want them depressed over what was being said about leadership. And
I
that's
do
happened.
remember that happening. Yes.
And it does happen.
Hmm.
For
So
me, I'll answer the question today right now. Yes, I do want to be a pagan leader. I have been a pagan leader. When I joined the Carillions a year ago, this was one of the first groups in a long time that I felt like, yeah, I'm okay starting from the bottom.
Hmm.
And I've already have a constituency. I'm already, I'm going to have a study group and a wit and shrine and hopefully et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
I already got people that have jumped on my bandwagon. I'm incredibly grateful for their friendship and their companionship, as well as the understanding that, hey, um, you know, I'm here for them. And so my question is, what makes a leader? In my mind, I see two kinds of leaders. The leadership of that you're here to serve me and take care of me, or I'm here to serve you and facilitate. your journey the way you need to do it, not the way I need you to do it.
Mm.
Obviously, sir, I see you on the latter end of that spectrum. You
That
have
is the way
given
that I look at it.
you have given me tools, you've given us tools to pick and choose for this is going to work for me, this is going to work for me, this is going to work for me. And a person who is unbiased and can delegate, says Loopy. That's a
Those are valuable skills.
I absolutely agree with that.
Mm.
But then
Hello to Loopy. Hello, Cosmo.
there are those people that come in and the community looks at you and said, "Who made you leader?" And you get at that point of like, because I showed up to do the work, because I'm here to clean up after the event, because I'm the one that said, "Okay, guys, let's go. Come on, let's get started."
Mm-hmm.
Let's circle up the pagans. You know, because I've stepped up to say, "I'll herd the cats." Because when asked, "Hey, can someone help?" I said yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. Things must be done, and they don't get done if people aren't willing to step up and help to do them. And in a lot of ways, that is what makes an actual leader, because it's not authority that makes a person a leader. It's not rank, and it's not even office for the most part, because you can be in a high office in a given tradition or have a high rank and absolutely no skill as a leader. Um, Depending on the circumstances, you can, or be exactly the worst kind of leader, but and be ineffective. The thing about leadership, in my mind, in part, is that it's a partnership. It's not something that you impose, it's something you build, and you really build it together in the end. Um, and I see that we have Sherry Dunnigan in the chat room, who remarks that they're one that steps up and so many get upset with them for doing that. And one of the other things about leadership is you can't be too concerned about other people's opinions. Eleanor Roosevelt famously said that, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's to the effect of, "You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, so you may as well do what seems right to you," because someone will always disagree. Someone's always going to tell you you're wrong. Someone's always going to tell you um, that they can do it better, whether they've ever done anything in their life or not. But you have to keep your eye on yourself. And are you being true to what you're doing? Are you doing your best? Are you doing a decent job? Those are your real questions. Are you pleasing everyone? Not going to. Don't even try to do that, because it will fail. Because there are certain people in any community who disagree with everything on a professional level. It's on principle. They must disagree. Others who do it out of jealousy, others who do it out of ignorance. Um, and sometimes they're right too. You never know. But you always have to be open to that possibility as well, that what you're doing might not be the right way, because sometimes you will find it isn't. And then what do? You change what you're doing. If you see something better, you pick that up. Um, we have a question in the chat room. As elders, how is the current state um,
of what is going
uh,
on.
and who is an elder now? Well, I come from the Karelian tradition, and an elder is a specific office. It's not just someone who's lived a long time, and the elders are exactly who they are because they are in that office. They are the members of a specific council. I think my answer would be, for the most part, that the people who constitute elders are those who are in positions, whether that's their title or not, either formally or informally, because sometimes, back in the 90s in Chicago, Donna Cole Schultz, Victoria Carlson, in particular, were two of the major elders of the Chicago community. Why were they the major elders of the Chicago community? Because they were doing all kinds of things all the time. Um, they were lovely ladies. They were older ladies, so they kind of fit the image of an elder. But what actually put them in that position was their activity. Um, and um, and to answer Lupi's actual question, because that Lupi is saying they mean elders in the general pagan society, and the answer is I think the word is largely meaningless. It's so ill-defined, it carries very little real meaning. Um, I think usually if there's a productive conversation going on about, quote, the elders, then they're referring to people who are in positions of prominence within their various backgrounds. I know there's been a lot of talk about providing for the elders of the community, and that's who that conversation really refers to. The people who have given their lives to build the community. But that is
There's a
not
word.
an official title. It's a description.
There's a word that hasn't been brought up yet, either
Hmm.
by you or Loopy when it comes to it, but it's experience.
Hmm.
I mean, I've, like I said, I started this when I was young, and my beloved archpriestess, the Right Reverend Elizabeth High Corell,
Hmm.
I've been actually a witch longer than she's been alive. And
Yes.
she's my beloved archpriestess because of the respect that she has earned in my eyes, for
Hmm.
instance. I think the first, was it the first elder? Or what's her name?
Alyssa, Lady Alyssa.
Alyssa is, yeah, is younger, is a very young woman
Hmm.
in herself. And she is our first elder because she
Yes.
earned that
Hmm.
title by the definitions that are listed in black and white. It
Hmm.
says this is what makes an elder, and she went and earned it.
Yes.
Can you talk to me a little bit about these young people that are being seen as leaders and elders and you know that have, like, because we know Liz has been doing this since she was a kid.
Hmm.
You've been doing this since you were a child. You were
Yeah,
raised
I
in this
was that
tradition.
16-year-old high priest.
So can
Um,
you tell me a little bit about, as because Loopy says I've met 16-year-olds saying they're elders. Well,
I would have been that because I held that office at that age in this tradition. Again, based on the definitions of the tradition. Um, and partly also on the concept of conscious incarnation, but that's a whole other conversation. Um, before I talk to that, I want to say that being an elder, in the sense that I understand the word, does not just mean living a long time as an elder of the community. I've met some people who think they're great elders because they've been sitting in the corner doing nothing for 40 years. If you sat in the corner and did nothing for 40 years but complain about everybody else, I don't consider you an elder. Show me what you did that was constructive. You should have a good list of things that you've done. Everyone that Eric has mentioned, Lady Alyssa, Lady Elizabeth, Lord Phoenix, who are fairly young elders in their 30s, all have a huge list of accomplishments behind them. They all came to us early in their lives. They became Corellian clergy, every one of them before they were 20. Um, some of them significantly younger than that. And they were very, very active, very accomplished, did a great deal of study, and they did the things that, in our view, made them worthy of the status of archpriest or elder, according to which one we're talking about. But it was not just that they had, it was not the number of years, was the number of accomplishments that matter to us. The other thing is we really do not want to be one of those organizations where the 90-year-old archpriest dies and is succeeded by the 81-year-old archpriest. That is not, in our opinion, a recipe for success. So we do try to bring people up while they're um, vigorous and able to bear the weight of these offices. Because I can tell you, as I'm getting older, the office is getting heavier. Lady Crystal, I'm sure, would have a word or two to say about that. Our first priestess retired, um, particularly when you've been doing it for decades. And so there's a lot to be said in an organization for keeping young people in prominent positions. It keeps the blood flowing, for one of a better way to put it. It keeps you in touch with new ideas, because it's so easy for a person to fossilize as they grow older. I think that's the most horrible thing imaginable, and I hope that I don't do it, but it's a very easy thing to do, particularly if you only know other old people. Um, I think it's very important as an individual to also know young people, and for an organization to have people involved at every level, at every age.
So
I don't
here
know if that quite answers your question, but
a piece of advice for people like me who have some years behind them,
mhm,
getting involved in a tradition that has 20 somethings, 30 somethings that are in leadership position.
mhm.
You know, when you sit there and go, like I said, I got underwear older than them. Sometimes you have that feeling.
Yeah.
And how would you address somebody who comes off with that attitude? What advice would you give them?
Oh my goodness, that is a very interesting question. One of the things I would point out is that many of our elders are also much older. We do run the entire gamut, but I think that I would point out that age is a state of mind, and again, we're looking at abilities and accomplishments. And no matter how young you are, no matter how old you are, there are all kinds of things you can do. Um, I mean, we have elders who were appointed. I don't know if they'll be happy if I use the term when they were elderly, uh, but we have some who come under that heading when they were further along in years. But um, what we do want continuity. When we have people come into some of these positions, we want them to be there for more than a couple of years. Um, and we have a good many different people in these positions. It's not like it's just one person. Um, and again, there's a very famous and cliched saying that the children are the future, but they are. The young people are the future. And if you forget that, then you are the past. I've watched oh, and Sherry says, just don't call them geriatric. I will abide
We're
by that.
we're mature
Yes.
people, people of
And
maturity.
we have had people come to us already in their 70s and achieve high positions with us, because they deserve that. We've also had people achieve high positions when they were much younger. Um, it's not a matter of age. It's a matter of what you're willing to do. It's a matter of, um, are you willing to serve the people, for one of a better way to put it.
So are you saying that we're a meritocracy, that people advance through their merits?
I certainly hope so. Um, I would like to think that. Um, and and this is veering off of elders a little bit to all the different degrees and ranks that there are in the metaphysical world. Every now and then, someone will just explode on you. They come to a certain point, and when you reach each stage of initiation, each stage of growth, spirit will put you where you need to be. If you have things that are unresolved, you will need to resolve them. And we've had people who reached elder status, seemingly completely put together, completely ready for this role, and they exploded. And they were
I
usually
want
the
to
older ones.
I want to bring up another caste of doers in the pagan community.
Hmm.
You have the elders, you have the experienced ones, you have the visionaries,
Hmm.
you have the personalities and the luminaries, the BMPs as we call them. And then you've got the people that are like that are sitting at home, or they come to things and on their own, and they go think, and they absorb. They're the
Hmm.
consumers of all this
Hmm.
energy that the leadership is given.
And if
But
you're running
isn't
things
there a
correctly,
nice
they're one of the major supports of the whole business.
hmm but right in the middle of that
Hmm.
are what I call the middle muckety mucks,
Hmm.
the ones that are getting the daily tasks done.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are carrying wood and chopping wood and carrying water every day.
Hmm.
Can you address some of those? That sect of people, or that
We talk about that
swath of people.
extensively in second degree, because in the Correllian tradition, often those people are second degree. Not always, but second degree tends to fill that slot very often, where you are working with your specialties, you're working with your jobs, you're really holding everything up. Um, and organizations don't work without that. You have to have the people who are doing the everyday work. And they are very much in positions of leadership themselves. You don't have to be Archpriest X to be a leader. Um,
In the army, you have the sergeants. In the corporate world, you have your admins. The admins' assistants run companies. Everybody
mhm,
knows that. That's who we're talking about here. The admins, the ones that are, you know,
yeah.
making sure that this works. That what we've got here is getting to the people.
Mhm. Well, a tradition does not work simply because the we'll say the archpriesthood work. The high priesthood also have to work. The temples have to work. The mentors have to work. And if any of these things break down, you've got a problem. And they're all equally important. It does not matter if you are the great and powerful archpriest or archpriestess X, if you're the only person in the organization, um, or if there are maybe five sycophants around telling you how great you are. Um, that's
Gee,
not what
that
it's
sounds
about.
so familiar to me. Not mentioning names.
Um, and it's it's to me, if you were to ask me how I think about leadership, I think of it as a balancing act in a lot of ways, because there are all these disparate elements, and you can't make everyone happy, but you also don't want to make them all unhappy either, because then you got a mess. Uh, and a lot of times it's kind of like surfing. You have to keep your balance, or you're going to fall off. And um, part of
Also,
that
the
is through personal
balance.
relationships.
Also, there's the balance of your work life. You know, the how do you feed yourself? You gotta, how do you keep the roof over your head? There needs to be a vocation, some form of, making money, and that can take time away from the tradition that you're leading.
Well,
That's an important balance as well.
that makes us a market religion. I'd like to offer a little bit of a different twist.
Hmm.
So I think we're coming to the most singular diplomatic moment of the pagan world.
Hmm.
Not the Corellian world, though it is definitely for the Corellian world. Um, I definitely see now for us that there's this diplomatic moment where everybody's going to be engaging at the Parliament of the World's Religions, and there are
Hmm.
so many pagans, and there's already two very distinct uh, groupings um,
At
that have
least
gone
two.
in, at
Yeah.
least two groupings of pagans who don't necessarily see eye to eye. We know this because I've been attending Arthur. As we know, Lord Arthur has a very different point of view of what he's trying to do, and he's been a member and a vice chairman of the Parliament.
Hmm.
Then you have the academics. So Arthur believes that what paganism means and should be represented at in the world councils, and he's actually sits as the president of the Ethnic Council of Europe, of the Pagan Council of Europe, is the idea of the indigenous religions are really the pagan religions. That they have to be indigenous, especially to Europe and to the near Middle East. And these are the ones when he goes to the public, to the world. These are the leader. He's such a leader that he's taken on so many of these things for so long that when he
Hmm.
represents, we know definitely who he's representing and who he's identifying.
Yes.
And people get
That's
very upset.
fascinating. I've never heard his name before.
Oh, Andros, I have no doubt because because the
Wait,
American
Andrus?
Hmm.
Andras.
Andres
Oh yeah,
Corbin Arthur.
yeah.
No,
He
don't know the
oh
name.
one of the most powerful pagan leaders in the world. You know why he doesn't deal with America? Because he was ridiculed by the others for his beliefs in dealing with indigenous and
Hmm.
indigenous rights. He was driven. He has more than 40 acres, I believe, in Maine. He has a family of beautiful children. He served as the vice chairman of the parliament for two stints, as you know, that sort of thing, and is very, very influential. But just
Hmm.
he's just not an American centric pagan. Oh, there are pagans all over the world that I know that are not American centric.
Hmm.
American people, let's identify American paganism only represents it represents one of the more larger communities. Europe has a lot of pagan communities,
Hmm.
and the Pagan Federation and things of that nature. So they've got it. Um, there's a number of groups in South Africa that have been there for 30, 40 years. India has some pretty big leaders who have nothing to do with America. They don't want anything to do with America. Um, we've had groups there. So yeah, but ours. So we go into the parliament with this is sort of European idea of what paganism is.
Hmm.
And in one of the interviews I did, he basically identified us as neo-pagan or a new living order. And because of circumstances of Americans, not not our Andros himself, Lord Andros
No.
reacted, but because of the way the Americans reacted, I was called a liar for 10 years over what was said.
Hmm.
And it was only in 2018 when it was found out when he was asked directly, "Is this
Hmm.
what he's doing?" He goes, "Absolutely, always."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a winning moment. But you get these factions in place. We're coming to the. But here's the point: we're about to get to the greatest diplomatic moment
Hmm.
of the parliament, and they just shifted gears on me. I don't know if people noticed it, but they joined the UN's movement
Hmm.
called Next Gen Movement. UN is about to dump everybody and put its energy in dealing with creating young leaders and revising and re-updating. And I hate to say it, they're going to take the UN metaverse into the metaverse. But they've
Hmm.
just made a very strong statement of where they're going next. Not just the Parliament and the UN, and it's next gen. They're about to. Most of the other leadership above it is going to is either going to get help or they're going to get out of the way. But for us as pagans, us particularly as Corellians, is this moment of diplomacy. How are we going to build on this very unique moment in history? And we're preparing. We're working really hard as a tradition,
We're getting our zucchinis ready.
and this is why I'm asking about leadership. I want to see what we're dealing with, right? And we're going to have the biggest concentration of pro leadership, and everybody at the parliament is going to see themselves as leader, and they should. Karl Marx, Barbara Marx Hubbard said it back in 1993. This is a unique opportunity. 1 in 10, 1 in a million people will arrive.
Hmm.
Yeah, 1 in a million. We, people who go to the parliament are 1 in a million. We were that year because we were 6,000. Now it's going to be 8,000. We'll probably be a little bigger than that.
Hmm.
And that's why we stepped up. And so for me, the leadership at the parliament, what could I do? Because I'm the loyal opposition of most of the pagan movements. To be perfectly frank, I am much more popular, less academic oriented, less about those issues as I am about the popular issues. Witch hunting. Let me put it
Hmm.
exactly. While they're worried about which skirts were worn by which tribes, sorry, academics, I care more about who's getting burned today. Why can we do to stop it? We're going to
Hmm.
have that moment. We're going to have this fantastic moment, mm,
Hmm.
to deal with that. And so for me, I've gone 30 years. I mean, everybody knows my story. You can hear it another time, Journey to the Parliament. But I believe for the community as a whole, why I'm trying to identify who's the leadership, I'm not looking for no's. I get those all day. I'm looking for yeses.
Hmm.
I don't care if you say no. I believe you and I pass. Hmm?
Yeah.
If you say yes and you come work with me and don't do the work, bye. I don't care. We're constantly looking for yeses. I'm really I'm hoping for a lot of yeses come to this next parliament.
Hmm.
How the community is going to work. But I think it is a very diplomatic moment, and it's going to put a
Hmm.
huge amount of stress, tremendous stress, on the community as a whole, because you're going to see the emergence of a global network of pagan and interfaith leaders out of it.
Hmm.
We're ready for it. I think it'll catalyze. And so that's the leadership challenge heading to everybody else. Can they accept there are these people who are leading on a global basis trying to solve world problems? That's going to be tough. That's going to be
Hmm.
really tough.
It's going to be a very interesting ride.
Hmm.
That's way
You
over
were
my
talking
pay
about
grade,
the
so I'm
pagan
gonna bow
leadership
out.
conferences,
There you go.
um, but
Well, I think you've gone through the subject today. So why don't you give us some closing notes?
well, I think in closing, I would say if you think that leadership is about having privilege for yourself, you're misunderstanding it. If you
Hmm.
think about that leadership is about bossing other people around and that's what there is to it, you're misunderstanding it. Leadership is a two-way street, and
Hmm.
it is in its way a path of service. Um, I mean, you can put a crown on your head and sit on a throne, but that isn't going to get you much by itself. That is not what leadership is. Now, um, you can have all the lovely trappings of leadership that you want if you actually are leading,
Hmm.
but the trappings are only trappings. They don't matter by themselves. You can have whatever office that you can get, but if you don't know what to do in it, it doesn't really mean anything.
Not really.
It's about working with people, and really it's about helping them, because if you're not helping them, they're not going to listen to you. Why would they? Um, there's the popular saying that leading pagans is like herding cats. But if you want to herd cats, anyone who's ever had one knows all you have to do is open the food can, they'll follow you anywhere. But you have to find the food. And if you're feeding the community will follow. And that's what leadership is really about, providing sustenance.
There you go. Well, we want to thank everybody who wants to serve
Yes.
there. We want to thank everybody who is out in the chat rooms. And Mason, all who attended. I don't think Mason
Yes,
ever
indeed.
said, did Mason ever actually say anything?
I believe so, but not, but
Okay. He was a silent soul today. And we want to thank all of you. And as always, we'll be
yes.
back tomorrow with the Daily Spell. If you want to come on our show, come on. Write paganworldtv at gmail.com. DM us or let us know what you want to be there. This week is going to be an exciting week. On Tuesday, I don't know what we're talking about tomorrow, but on Wednesday, the Pagan Economy Club is going to meet again. And this time we're going to talk about the power of amplification. Why do you want those numbers?
Hmm.
Thursday is going to be another Tarot Thursday, I think. And Friday, Fridays are the show I want to talk people into. I want UFO experiences. We're going to take another walk on of the magical side, and I want to talk about UFO experiences. Do you have UFO experiences, Don?
Actually, yes.
See, we want to know about your UFO things, and we want some of you to come on and talk to about your UFO experiences. So, UFO Friday here at the Daily Spell. And with that, Don, I will leave you to the prayer.
Very good. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to aid us as we go forward and to help us to be mindful of the relationships in our lives and how they affect both ourselves and the others involved. Help us to be of service to our world. Help us to be of service to ourselves. Help us to use wisely our talents and resources. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love and respect, and may you blessed be. And may you blessed be until next time.